Hi, this is Érika from Small Robot Studio. Having infinite brushes is probably one of the most appealing features in digital painting, but the power of endless possibilities is overwhelming. It brings tons of questions. My experience has led me to approach brushes with a purpose-driven mindset. Am I making lines, painting areas, or textures? The first stage of my painting is sketching, which involves the first category, lines. As newcomers to digital painting, we'll usually encounter this sort of ugly lines. Quite frustrating compared to our lines with pencil and paper. Jittery lines are a result of how the technology of painting tablets work. To fix this, you will need a line stabilizer. For Procreate, the line stabilizer is found under the name of Streamline inside the Stroke Path section of the brush editor. In Infinite Painter, you will find it under the name of Smooth in the Stroke section of the brush editor. In Clip Studio Paint, this feature is a lot more complex. Choose any brush or pen and open the Subtool Detail panel. Then go to the Correction section. You will see all of these different options. As you hover through them, a description will pop up in the bottom. As for Photoshop users, before the 2018 version, the software did not include a line stabilizer. If you are using a version that does, you have to activate it for each brush in the Settings panel, and then on the option bar, where you can modify the intensity of the stabilizer. If you have an earlier version of Photoshop, you will need an external software such as Hex Stylus for Mac or Lazy Nezumi for PC. When I'm sketching, I keep the stabilization effect quite low, so my lines are fluid and flowy. Most brushes can make a line if we make them small enough. This is all you need to start sketching. I'm not gonna tell you which brush is correct. Try different ones and experience what feels right for you. Personally, I hate pencil brushes with texture and low opacity lines. I like fully visible lines. If I need to make a line lighter, I will use a big eraser with low opacity. Erasers in digital painting are just like brushes, that instead of coloring pixels, they turn them transparent. Something cool about Clip Studio Paint is that it lets you choose transparency as a color to paint, so you don't have to switch between the eraser and the brush tool. If you wish to erase partially, adjust the opacity sliders. There is also the option of activating opacity based on the pressure you apply on your pen. For specifics on how to do this, I recommend looking for the manual of your software of choice to get the most complete and updated information. When inking, my settings are slightly different. I will increase the effect of the line stabilization. I will also modify my brush to increase its size based on the pressure I apply on the pen. This will allow me to vary the width of my lines to create a more interesting line art. I aim for the cleanest line art possible, so I will use brushes with no opacity variations. I will do the same for my eraser. I don't want to partially erase anymore, like I do when sketching. Cheeky translucent lines make my line art dirty. Control settings won't guarantee good line art. In my experience, the most difficult skill is controlling the width of the lines, which I achieve through the discipline of calligraphy. To help you develop this skill, I created inking drills based on calligraphy exercises, with video references and brushes. Our Patreon supporters will be able to access them as part of our rewards. You can also find them in my Gumroad store for an accessible price. Since I'm already on advertisement time, I want to thank all our Patreon supporters. We are amazed by the growth of this community, and we don't have the words to describe how thankful we are. Learn more about our rewards and support us on patreon.com/smallrobotstudio. Let's move on. The next stage of my painting is blocking silhouettes. My focus will change from painting lines to painting areas. I'm not sure why, but I've observed a tendency of filling large areas with small brushes. Avoid this. 1. It will take you ages. 2. It's very likely that you will leave unpainted holes. And 3. This repetitive movement of the hand can lead to injuries. Increase the size of your brush or choose brushes with blocky characteristics. At this stage, I want silhouettes to be a solid color with no translucency. I will avoid brushes with opacity changes again. Brushes are not the only way to fill areas effectively. You can do this by selecting areas with a lasso tool and then filling that selection. In Photoshop and Procreate, this will be a two-step process, which I find annoying, because Clip Studio and Infinite Painter have a tool that does it on one step. For Clip Studio, inside the Figure subtools, you will find a lasso fill tool. In Infinite Painter, among the default brushes, there's a folder named Fills. They got several options with or without texture. My silhouette is not quite done yet. This is much better. Painting edges is the next stage. As a painter, I must be aware of the three types of edges. Define edges like those that come from a sharp change of plane, soft borders from a rounded corner, and lost edges from a soft transition of planes. Different materials like fur will also modify the edges of my silhouette. The silhouette of my painting is just the start of painting edges, because shading or blending colors will be the same. Based on the type of edge that I'm aiming for will be the brush that I choose. Another common tendency of beginners is to favor only soft airbrush-like transitions, concealing any evidence of a brush stroke. I always encourage my students to go nuts with their brushwork. Many celebrated artists are praised for their brushwork. Imagine how different Starry Night would be if it was airbrushed. Brushwork carries the personality of an artist and will infuse an artwork with your unique voice. I find perfectly clean gradings boring and lifeless because the software can create them in one click. You don't need an artist for that. Textural transitions, on the other side, are full of life. As you probably notice, I switch my focus from painting areas to painting textures. The three types of borders can be made with any brush. Make a brush small and it will give you a sharp edge. Increase its size and introduce middle values and the edge will get softer. The more you do this, it will become a soft transition. We are communicating the same borders, but more interestingly. Do be careful of overusing a textural brush to the point where a pattern becomes evident. Instead of looking expressive and personal, it will look computer generated. A real-life brush won't make the exact same stroke twice. Digital painting is different because brushes work as repeating stamps. Some settings will help break some of that mechanical repetition, but mechanical repetition is what machines are good for. The artificiality of the machine will become too obvious in the painting. I fight this by constantly switching the different brushes, rotating my canvas, and using the smudge tool to modify existing strokes. The smudge tool works like a finger that pushes paint that's already in the canvas. Just like the eraser, it can take the shape and characteristics of any brush. This tool looks very similar in most painting softwares, a little pointing hand. On Clip Studio, it looks like two blending drops of paint. Successful brushwork will have variety. There you go. Any brush will be a good brush if they are purpose-driven. Regardless if you are the type of person that uses a few basic brushes, or like me, you collect lots of them, don't let brushes control you by keeping these three goals in mind: painting lines, painting areas, or painting textures. That's it for this tutorial. If you find it useful, make sure that you leave a like so other people can find it. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, as we are bringing out CG and illustration tutorials every week. Become a patron and access tutorial assets, bonus content, a private Discord, and more by clicking in the link below.